Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a reading specialist and I help parents of kids who are struggling with reading. In this video, I'm going to share with you some really practical, simple tips, strategies you can use to help your child build their reading fluency. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do that now, and then also hit that little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video about helping your child learn to read. Okay, so let's start by defining what reading fluency is. Now, often people will mean reading speed when they say reading fluency, but that's only part of the story. So yes, reading fluency does involve being able to read at a good speed, not too slowly. That's part of it. But it also means reading with appropriate expression. Now, expressive reading might be like what you do with your child at bedtime or what you did when they were younger. You were, making the scary voice of the troll or a big deep voice for a bear. And your child doesn't have to be an actor or an actress when they're reading, but they do need to be able to change their voice when the character is angry. Or if it's a question like, when will we go to the store today? Their voice needs to go up at the end. Or if there's an exclamation point, they should not be reading it like this. They need to read it with some emotion, right? So reading with appropriate expression is important. Again, your child does not have to be a dramatic genius, but they need to know what's going on in the story. They need to look at the punctuation marks and be able to change their voice accordingly. Another part of reading fluency is reading smoothly. So I don't know if you've ever heard a child read like a robot, but if you've ever heard a child read very choppy, there's maybe a lot of, space between words, or it doesn't sound like a human voice reading, it's just maybe one word at a time, then that's not fluent reading, right? We want our kids to be able to read smoothly. Now, it is totally normal for a child to read like that when they're first learning to read, but we don't want them to stay there, right? We want to build fluency, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. So, reading speed, reading expression, being able to read smoothly, and then another important component of reading fluency is reading accurately, right? It doesn't matter if your child can read 200 words per minute, if they're not reading the words accurately, and if they're not correcting any mistakes that they make, then they're still not reading fluently. So there's a lot more to reading fluency than reading speed, okay? And again, when our kids are first learning to read, it's totally normal that they're not going to be fluent. For many kids, they're not just going to pick up a book and all of a sudden be able to read it. They have to sound words out. They're going to be slow. They might sound like a robot, and it's going to take time for them to build up to the point where they sound fluent, okay? But over time and with practice, kids' reading fluency should improve. And if it's not, this might be a sign that your child may benefit from extra help with reading. I'll talk about that at the end of the video, how I can give you some help with that. But here are some tips now so that your child can improve their reading fluency. My first tip is to have your child reread lists of words and complete texts like stories or passages more than once, okay? The first time a child reads a list of words or maybe a story, they might sound a little bit choppy, so what you want to have them do is read it again, and that can help build fluency. So this is an example of a word list from our program, Rising Readers. I will leave a link so that you can learn more about how you can get your child extra help with reading through Rising Readers. But it's just a simple word list. The kiddos here are working on learning long I spelled with silent E. And so maybe your child sounds out the words the first time. So the first word it's pile, slim, trip. And they say pile, slim, slim, trip, trip. And they're sounding it out sound by sound. That's fine. That's how they're figuring out what the words are. Totally normal. Now have them read it again, okay? And this time you can see maybe, can they read the whole word like pile, slim, trip without sounding it out? And if they still need to sound it out, see if you can challenge them a little bit. So instead of pile, see if they can say pile, slim. So I'm kind of chunking the word into parts. Trip, pride. So what I was doing is I was reading everything up until the vowel, and then reading the vowel and everything else together. So that's called onset and rhyme. You don't need to know the words, but I'm basically just chunking it. Instead of reading sound by sound, I was modeling how to have your child read part by part, okay? So the second time they read it like that, and then the third time, see if they can read just the word. It may take them more than 3 times, and that's totally normal. But what I'm trying to show you is that you want to have your child read a word list or an entire text more than once, because they will get better and better at it. They'll improve fluency, and when they get better at reading some words or some text, that actually helps them do better when they're reading other new texts in the future. My second tip is to try having your child reread a little story or some kind of text along with you or with an audio recording. So let me give you an example. Let's say that your child reads this little story, The Vet. Again, this comes from our Rising Readers program. And they're like sounding it out, right? It doesn't maybe sound very fluent the first time that they read it, but the second time in the same voice you read together, Ned is a vet. And it's okay if they're not truly knowing all of the words, but you modeling that more fluent, smooth reading can actually help them. So maybe have them read it 1 or 2 times on their own. And then the last time, either you read with them out loud, or they read out loud along with, like, if you have like a book on tape or, CD, no, I was gonna say CD, I don't know, a book on the computer, some sort of digital book, whatever it is now, right? That they can read along with, have them do it along with that voice. Reading with a more fluent reader, meaning like you or, somebody else's voice recording, can help a child improve their fluency. My third tip is to have your child use shorter passages for rereading. So we've been talking about rereading, and if your child's reading like even just a beginning chapter book, that can be a lot to reread. Perhaps if it's a beginning chapter book, they reread just their favorite chapter or just their favorite part. But it can really be helpful, especially if your child is struggling with reading, to use shorter passages. So you saw this example, I believe it's like a short E passage from our program, Rising Readers. And then, as kids get older and their reading skills improve, the short passages are still going to be, they're going to be short, but they're going to be a bit longer, right? But as you can see, it's not like an entire book. It fits onto one page. And then it's just easier for them to reread as opposed to having to reread a really long story. So many times it's helpful to use shorter passages like those from Rising Readers. My last tip, and I should say last, but definitely not least, because this is super important, is to make sure that your child has a really solid foundation in phonics skills. Phonics being the relationships between letters and sounds. So not just knowing their letter sounds, but also knowing that, for example, the A-Y in the word say can represent the A sound. If your child does not have those phonics skills, they're likely never going to build fluency because, if they can't sound out a word, it's not going to eventually go into their brain and be something that they can read instantly. Sounding out a word has to come first, always. So what you want to do is make sure that your child doesn't have any phonics gaps, work on the skills that they need to work on. And I actually have a free guide that will help you pinpoint any phonics gaps that your child has so you know exactly what to work on with them. And then in the guide, I also give you next steps as far as like what you should do to help them address those skill gaps. And by working on phonics, you will in turn improve their reading fluency. Okay, so if you want access to that free parent guide, I will include a link for that in the caption for this video so you can check that out. That can help your child build phonics and reading fluency. And that's all I've got for you. So thanks so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.